no conflict was allowed. So we were the happy family, which is sort of, you'd imagine, a nice place to be. But actually for me, it dampened down any ability to express emotion. Can we actually say that we love each other and that I miss you? I want to be able to tell you that and tell you I love you, you see. Well, my gosh, the reaction, I'd open this Pandora's box. I feel maybe I'm going down into that rabbit hole. I'm shutting down. The depression for me is that experience. And it happens, unfortunately, quite quickly. So what I would say is that I feel that this technique for me helps me recover out of the rabbit hole quicker. Physiologically, they've done experiments to show that when people lengthen their out-breath like this, the stress hormones go down. And that leaves space for joy to come in.
Hi, I'm Claire, founder of Creativity Found, a community for creative learners and educators, connecting adults who want to find a creative outlet with the artists and crafters who can help them do so, with workshops, courses, online events and kits. For this podcast, I chat with people who have found or refound their creativity as adults. We'll explore their childhood experiences of the arts, discuss how they came to the artistic practices they now love, and consider the barriers they may have experienced between the two. We'll also explore what it is that people value and gain from their newfound artistic pursuits, and how their creative lives enrich their practical, necessary, everyday lives. For this episode, I'm chatting with Tina Wells. Hi Tina, how are you?
I'm doing all right, thank you. Bit of a croaky cough, so sorry I sound a little bit, but I'm fine, thank you.
Good. Can you start by telling me how you tap into your sense of creativity?
I love knitting. It's something I learned. Well, actually, my mum didn't have much patience to teach me, but she was a most amazing knitter in the 70s when I was growing up. And she'd have a lovely friend from Wales come and they'd knit together and talk about all the gossip. You know, that was the good bit. Anyway, she wasn't that patient to teach me. But once I left home, I decided that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to learn. I'm going to teach myself. I'd seen enough of it to know what was going on. And I do it every now and again. And now I love doing little mini projects for my grandnephew. And then I love dance. Dance has been an important part of my life from when I was very young, doing ballet and then university days, jazz, and then salsa in the last, say, 20 years, Sarok, even samba in America. I learned samba. The beauty of that art of dancing to music and letting myself go and really hearing the rhythm of the music just absorbs me totally. And I don't do enough of it. You've reminded me. But my other love is like the other end of the energy scale, which is Qigong, Tai Chi, which is what I share now because it's extremely important for my own mental health. And the particular form that I found after I did many years of yoga training, I trained as a yoga for pregnancy teacher, and then I trained as a baby massage trainer. And then further down the line, we ended up living in California in 2008. And I was doing some more yoga styles, Korean yoga called Dharna yoga, waking up this belly chakra, the Dantian. And I started to feel energy between my hands. So I realized, even though I'd done many years of yoga, that this was getting me more in touch with a feeling of energy. So I wanted to pursue it. And then I thought maybe Tai Chi, it seems that they're moving slowly with awareness. So my own sense of creativity now is through sharing and doing it for my own mental health, but sharing it for others to really find a sense of peace. That is the bottom line with this practice. So that's my creativity journey at the moment.
Wonderful. You mentioned the knitting and mother's not lack of patience to teach you, but generally when you were younger, were creative activities a big part of your life? Were they encouraged and were they in any way a part of your projected trajectory through life and what you wanted to do when you grew up?
Yeah, I mean, the dancing was extremely close to my heart. My dad was a very good pianist, just at home, you know, he loved it. So I started to do ballet classes at the age of 7. And actually the headmistress of that primary school happened to be an ex-Royal Ballet dancer and suggested to my mum that I should, at 11, or maybe earlier, go for trials for the Royal Ballet. And although that was an amazing thing, I was very protected. I lived in Liverpool. We didn't go to London. We did maybe for a show, maybe now and again. But, the thought of going, that was huge. So I was quite glad that my mum said, oh, I don't think so, and I was like, yeah, maybe not. But dance started and it carried on through my whole life. So I was encouraged, and I did go into my early teens learning the different grades, etc. And as I said, it led to my love of dance, which is still there because of the music, what it stirs in me. So as a child, the other aspect maybe was that I really noticed nature. I love flowers. And as a little girl, I remember one of my mum's friends, the same one that came to knit, Jean, she took me down we were quite close to a rail track, and there was this amazing white bellflower. And I absolutely remember this. We lived in Formby and I was only maybe 4, I reckon. I hadn't started school. Anyway, I remember this white bellflower, and she said, don't touch it because it was deadly nightshade. But to me, it was like I'd seen something amazing. So I don't think my parents knew that in me, actually. But this awareness of nature and living things came to me quite strongly, and I was appreciating that I could feel the life in me. I was alive. And this is like at that age. I mean, that's very young. But the person next to me, I couldn't feel their aliveness, but they were walking around as well. So I didn't understand how I could feel me, not them. But there was the first little seed of curiosity about life. And so that was the important thing in thinking about my love of nature came there. I went on to study biology and became an ecologist through my Liverpool University focus. And butterfly surveys was the next thing in an environmental records centre in Bristol. But just returning to that energy awareness, when I was in my A-levels and the chemistry teacher, I was at a technical college, he said this table used to be a living tree. And it was, it still is actually organic matter. It's no longer living in the ground. But if you think of it as it was as a tree, the organic matter that's in the tree and that's in us is the same elements, carbon, nitrogen. Forgotten my chemistry. But organic matter. Carbon is a key organic matter. And he said the different forms that we see that are alive in the world are only different because of the way the elements that are all the same are held together by energy bonds. So this is the first time someone had said, I heard energy. And I thought, crumbs, that's the common denominator of all life. This energy is holding the same elements in that tree together as me, but in a different format, a different way of configuring it. Wow, that was a moment of like, okay, I'm seeing under the surface now. So, and then the physics guy says, all organic matter will be destroyed. We see things dying and they disintegrate. But you can't destroy energy. So the energy that's in things will be transformed into other things. And then, of course, they talk about the cosmos and the stars and the universe. And I'm like, there's that energy again. And actually, that makes total sense to me. So, okay, so coming forward in time, I was interested in, very luckily, that energy side of life, even before I got to America to learn this form of Tai Chi.
That's a really interesting and insightful on your side, getting into that feeling of energy even before you get to the Tai Chi and that style of energy. But tell me a bit more about the science, because you were getting those from your science teachers, and then you said you were doing a science studies at university. So tell me more about that time and what you were hoping or maybe thinking that would lead to, if you even had those thoughts.
Yeah, well, I was doing my degree in 1978. I started my degree, and I loved the biology. I didn't know what it would lead to because, in actual fact, in those days, there weren't the environmental jobs or the interest in, the nature of things. But one of the courses which struck home very much for me was something called Man's Environment. And the lecturer was looking at the impact across the world, how we all interconnect. So I studied, qualified in ecology, and the interconnectivity of things, sort of goes back to the energy world in terms of we are all the same, actually, every living thing. And then also this Man's Environment looked at things like us humans and how, unfortunately, in the future, he said, the things that sort of control our natural numbers in the world, he said there may be in the future a major virus that goes across the world. So we were being told this in 1978, 79. Or you have another, God forbid, another world war. There are things that happen in the world that regulate us and our existence. So what I'm trying to say is that although a lot of my biology learning was very grounding, it was very connected to nature, I qualified in the natural history side of it and then went on to work with the butterflies and the public. I was aware of the connection across the world and how these things can affect us. And of course, we have just seen this with COVID.
You told me that you went to America, and you've told me in the past that your parents had gone to America. What was the logistics around that? Why did that happen?
Parents decided to emigrate. So I was about 26 when this happened. It had been taking some time. My dad had to retrain pretty well as a doctor, even though he was already a specialist, to actually practice in Texas. The reason they chose Texas is that my mum's sister had married a Texan in the 1960s. She missed her a lot. But we also had this conflict within the family where my father was brought up Jewish. My mum was a Welsh Methodist girl, not particularly religious in that case. But for my father, his family hoped that he'd marry a Jewish girl. It didn't happen. And at that point, when my mum married my father, sort of like against my father's mum's wishes, it was really a struggle for them. So although this was never spoken about, because we only talked about happy things, our day-to-day round the table as children was what the weather was like and what have you done today? Very nice present moment stuff, but actually no conflict was allowed. So we were the happy family, which is sort of, you'd imagine, a nice place to be. But actually for me, it dampened down any ability to express emotion. And the way I interpreted their nice way of thinking, saying, oh, we only want you to be happy, was that they don't want me to be sad. And if I showed any sadness, my mum would block it. Her blocking was, you're just fine. There's nothing wrong with you. These are her words. So there was no inquiry as to, why are you upset? No. Stop doing that. And I think later on I realized it because it was too painful for her. I was the eldest. I was the only girl. And I didn't know why I was being stopped. My emotion was being stopped. But I quite quickly stopped my emotion in the negative side. Expressing your emotions through tears is not actually negative, but of course, that was what I heard. We didn't talk about the fact that they were going to live, they were emigrating. No one else I knew, parents were leaving. I mean, to me, it felt like my home. They're going into some black hole. I didn't know where they were going. But we didn't think about it until it happened. And they were going for the ship. And I was like, I went into shock. I didn't know how to express that. The tears were coming. But again, my mum was, we're going, stop it. To her, it was hard, of course. And the interesting thing was, I'm sort of the one that raises the questions that she doesn't want to hear. I remember once we were on the way to see my grandma and my mum was stiff again in the front of the car. And I suddenly said, because Dad was in the training side of going to America, well, what's going to happen when you go to America? What's going to happen about Grandma? What happens when she's really elderly? Not we, because I'm the girl, I'm going to have to look after. And Mum goes, oh, for heaven's sake, it's going to be fine. You're going to come on lovely holidays. Stop it. So the usual thing. Oh, sorry. Stop it. So I stopped it. But I knew underneath. So, being a girl, very empathetic with my parents. My brothers seemed to not notice it. But I felt their feelings and this conflict between them. So anyway, we weren't allowed to express it. And off they went. And they came back But the first visit, coming back, I hadn't yet visited their new home. And I thought, I'm just going to ask them, can we not just talk about the weather on the phone and like what you've done? Can we actually say that we love each other and that I miss you? I want to be able to tell you that and tell you I love you, you see. Well, my gosh, the reaction, I'd opened this Pandora's box and she was shouting and like I've said something awful. And I'm like, she said, you don't understand how hard it was when I lived in Wales and we had to walk 7 miles to school every day. And we were very poor. I said, I know this, Mum. I know this. This is not what I'm saying. But I didn't understand. Well, she's not heard all I've said because we say we love each other. Anyway, my dad comes up and he's the lovely, gentle doctor. And he comes up and he says, what seems to be the trouble? So he sits down and Mum says, just tell your father what you've just said. I said, well, I will, but please don't interrupt me because I think you've heard it wrong. So I said to Dad, it's really hard for me not to be able to say I love you. I want to be able to say I love you because I miss you and you're a long way away and all we talk about is the weather and what you've done. So he goes, well, we thought now that you're 26 and you're married and you'd be okay. And I'm thinking, neither of them have got it. So I said, oh, it's all right. Again, squash it down. Anyway, guess what happens, of course? I thought I've ruined my relationship with my mum. I thought, that's it. It's completely in tatters. I don't know what I've said. But what I'd said, of course, had opened up her heart, which was some feelings of guilt, which I hadn't even realized was there. I had this deep sorrow of loss. For me, I was thinking, like, how many times will I see them before they die? And guess what? I wasn't wrong. My mum, 3 years later, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She lived on for a couple of years. This moment where I expressed this allowed her to accept me wanting to help her during that ovarian cancer time. So we started to say we loved each other on the phone. It did actually happen, but it was a trauma. And the lovely thing was, awful though it was, when she was discovered she had ovarian cancer, I said to her, I want to come and be with you when you go in for your first chemotherapy. And she said yes. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't opened that box. She would have wanted to protect me from that. So this allowed us to come together. Out of trauma, that's what is a nice message. Out of these terrible moments of shock and like, oh my gosh, I've ruined the whole relationship, came a moving together of recognizing me actually wanting to be helpful and her not squashing that and not saying, this is too much for you. She didn't do that. So there we go. Happy days.
Interesting. Yeah. Eventually it gets there. Tell me about your time in America and your introduction to Tai Chi at that point.
Yeah. In 2008, with my husband and our little boy who was 7, off we go to live in the San Francisco area because my husband's work gave him that opportunity. But I wasn't able to work. So I was very lucky to be able to try different forms of yoga, get really immersed in that sort of, the old hippie Thai, still there. And so there are loads of lovely things. So I went to a type of yoga, Korean style, called Dhan yoga. And we were taught to pummel our belly area where the Dhan Tien chakra is, a big energy center in Tai Chi. And so I started to feel the energy between our palms. We were encouraged to pummel it, feel the energy and expand it and contract it. And I thought, wow, this is more than my old yoga training and my own teaching in yoga for pregnancy and baby massage. It sort of connected me physically with the energy feeling. So I wanted more of that. So I looked around thinking Tai Chi maybe would do this, or Qigong. And I found a lovely English elderly lady, Wendy, teaching Tai Chi Chih, it's called. It's a meditative form of Tai Chi, not martial art. Very simple. It's 19 moves and one pose. And the lovely professor of Albuquerque, and a poet and an artist, a writer, he developed this after making some money in the stock exchange in New York, leaving his professor job at the university and traveling across the Far East to learn different forms of Tai Chi. He'd seen a man, the reason he even sparked this idea, a Japanese man, completely serene and calm in the midst of the crazy financial stock exchange. So Justin Stone, the American, approached him and asked him what he was doing. Like, what are you doing right now? And he said, well, in our culture, we learn to sort of block out and we can feel grounded and we're able to stand in the midst of activity serenely. So Justin Stone has decided he wants to learn about this, and he sets off and goes across the Far East and learns it. This is in the 60s and 70s. He ended up in Japan and lived there for 10 years, training to be a Tai Chi Chuan master. That's the form of Tai Chi you usually find in the West. He went back to Albuquerque after 10 years to teach Tai Chi Chuan. And there's 32 movements, or there's 108 movements, different forms. And the Americans in the university were going, Justin, we don't know about this. You've lived with this for 10 years. And he decided he needed to take the essence of many of the forms he'd learned to bring it into a simple form, but with the strong essence of what's these practices. And that's what he created then. So although it seems simple and maybe it's non-martial art, so maybe the Tai Chi people would go, where's the history to this? Actually, he created something that was more manageable for us. And the mental health side for me was immediate. In my first class, it was like my mind is now down in the soles of the feet. So we anchor the mind in the soles of the feet. And in the philosophy of Tai Chi, where the mind goes, the energy follows. So if you are very overwhelmed with excess energy, excess emotion, it is possible to draw it down to the ground with the mind. So this is the immediate relief I felt. Right at that point, I thought, I want to teach this one day. But I was really in the last 2 months of our time in America. So I just came home with a DVD to watch, how to do the movements. And there was one American teacher in the UK. I went to see her every now and again to practice and for her to correct my movements. And 3 years on, I went back after learning the sequence, went back for the teacher training. Now I have some of my students who are now teachers. So we're spreading it very slow, but it's spreading bit by bit.
And what kind of things were you up against then? Because you said about how it really helped you mentally and the busyness of your mind. What kind of experiences were you in that you needed that at that time?
Postnatally, about 6 months after Jamie was born, I had my first experience of very severe depression. And this came and went, and it has still come and gone, by the way. I'm not cured, but I am using these things to help me recover. So when I went to America with my husband and my little boy, Dad had a very, very serious illness. He was staying with us. And anyway, he survived amazingly. But after he went home, I tend to have a reaction to stress. I'm very good at the time. And then it's afterwards that it hits me. So the awareness of needing to learn skills to help myself manage this and also learn more about the brain. And I knew quite a bit about that from CBT training and different sorts of trainings before we went to America. And then went into a deep depression again in America after Dad had survived, thankfully, and gone back to Texas. And yes, it's an interesting one because I'm working at the Oxfordshire Recovery College now. And sometimes people say to me, oh my gosh, will this stop my anxiety? You know, you're describing it and we're doing it and I get it. And I said, look, you can try things, lots of things. Don't just focus on one maybe. And it helps me, but I do still at times find myself in depression or high anxiety, different aspects. So I never say this is the answer, but for me, it's the one thing I've stuck with. So all of these different trainings, yoga for pregnancy, baby massage was to help Jamie with bad eczema up to the age of 3. He was really ill. Actually, that plus, of course, the lack of sleep. The psychiatrists and the psychologists realized it's no wonder you're going into depression postnatally because of, bless him, tough times. And so I didn't really accept it in myself then, but interesting, hypnotherapy was the first skill and intervention that helped me recover in the very early days. And this form of Tai Chi, this meditative practice, is the thing that's so ingrained now, because if you teach it, you do it. So I knew by teaching it, there I'm sharing it, which is an amazing thing, but also I am making a practice for myself to keep as well as I can. And that's how I take it into my life.
And when you teach it, I'm assuming you get the benefit, not your benefit, but it's very nice for you, of seeing how your students react and what they gain from it. So what kind of things do you see from your students' point of view?
Sure. So particularly in the Recovery College here in Oxfordshire, I see it there in group settings. So there's always 2 tutors. We're there to actually just facilitate conversation and learn these skills. So what I see in people, because a lot of them amazingly have even got into the room, they've got out of bed, they've managed to get out the door, and that can take some time. And they've got to the college. And by the way, this is not referral from medics. They just join. They can join as students, no matter where they are in their recovery from a mental struggle. So in front of me, I have people and they show their stress. People are don't want to talk to anyone, they're quite withdrawn. You see the tension in the body. Well, how amazing it is when I say, well, lovely co-tutor usually does the check and we say, okay, how stressed do you feel now? This is really stress. This is nice and relaxed. So where are you? Before we do any of this Tai Chi Chih, where are you? And you don't have to show me, just see in your mind, where are you on that scale? And then we do some of it. And then we say, so where are you now? And then they decide where they are. Not everyone loves it. Some people find it challenging at that time and they need to go away, maybe come back. And you know what I mean? But those who just immediately benefit, they it just dissolves away. They don't see it, but I'm looking on and I see this relief, the tension stops, the shoulders are going down. I am guiding that. I'm giving them sort of a bit of a body scan before we start. One of the main takeaways is not the movement is amazing, the rocking aspect of the movement, because when the body rocks, the mind comes along for the ride. You're not telling them to sit still now. Focusing on your breath, which if you're in a state of trauma can be far too strong. So you're just saying, we're going to rock the body, going to feel the ground. And rocking the body lulls the mind into a false sense of security so it doesn't resist as much. Now you can draw your mind to feel the ground. So it's a very informal way. And this reaction of reducing the stress in the body, I also enhance now. Between the movements, we take a pause, we breathe in through the nose, and then a nice long candle breath or a straw breath where you imagine breathing gently through a straw. Physiologically, they've done experiments to show that when people lengthen their out breath like this, the stress hormones go down, and that leaves space for joy to come in. Justin Stone called this joy through movement, this style of Tai Chi. And that's, I feel, happens, that we're reducing those stress hormones and we're taking them down visually with the mind coming down through the body, relaxing the body and going down to feel the ground. So I see it in very many ways, and I get little glimmers of people telling me how it's changed their lives. So one girl came up to me and said, sometime later, "You've changed my life. My panic attacks are being controlled now by that long out breath." So anyone listening to this podcast who has got an exam coming up or, just stressful interactions with people in their lives, which, you can't choose your family. Sorry. My family are lovely, but there are challenges in our lives. So if you have a challenge happening, this grounding, bringing your mind to feel the soles of the feet in your shoes or on the floor, and doing this without people knowing what you do, breathing in through the nose and a nice slow out breath through the mouth. No one knows, but you know what? You are pausing and having a moment to know how to respond better rather than join the clash, So I use it in that way, but I also use it when I feel maybe I'm going down into that rabbit hole. I'm shutting down. The depression for me is that experience, and it happens, unfortunately, quite quickly. So what I would say is that I feel that this technique for me helps me recover out of the rabbit hole quicker. And as someone said, I've been on a mindfulness now teacher training course this week to become an extra mindfulness teacher. That sort of awareness of knowing yourself, becoming aware, and allowing some days that you just sit on the couch and do nothing. And that sometimes is what you need. And rather than pushing against it and saying, I must be better, I must be the natural positive Tina that I am normally, others around you and you yourself allowing for a bit of shutdown means that you don't prolong it. So I've learned that, if nothing else.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. You mentioned there more mindfulness. So generally, what are your plans or hopes for the future?
Yeah, I'm already teaching mindfulness present moment through the Tai Chi, present moment awareness, and this easy way into both mindfulness and meditation. But my future hopes are sharing it in open air festivals. I do it, of course, in the Recovery College as a sort of baseline, but I do it in hospitals. They may be having wellbeing days, both for the staff and the patients, or in companies. So I love to apply it to different groups of people and make it relevant for them. But the underlying thing I'm sharing is these life skills, and I see it being so valuable to integrate with what I already do. So I'd love it to be more widely spread. I need to do more of what we're doing with you, Claire. This is the first time I've been on a podcast. I've been on the radio a little bit. I'm talking about energy of all things way back. But anyway, I need more of this sort of thing to get out there, maybe to do more myself on social media, to give more of these little aha moments that I've learned. And the love of nature probably will be the vehicle. Like I'm doing forest bathing now. I've got a lovely garden room, and I've created a Japanese garden in memory of Justin Stone doing the Tai Chi Chih in Japan. And so, I've got it here happening, but also I really want to share it much more widely, share the things that I've learned alongside the actual skill of moving, rocking motion, feeling that.
Yeah. Oh, super. In the vein of spreading the word, how can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, lovely. Well, I do have a Facebook page, and I know you'll spell out Tai Chi Chih for people, but the Facebook page is called Tai Chi Chih Oxford UK. You'll find little video clips, and you'll find information about maybe why to come and do this. And I'd be very happy to hear from you if you're interested. And I can tell you on there about the festivals that are coming up and different events.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tina. I've had a really, really lovely conversation with you today.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing. Thank you for the amazing questions. They're quite deep questions.
You're welcome. I try.
Brilliant.
Thanks so much for listening to Creativity Found. I hope you enjoyed this episode and gained some value from it. If you did, perhaps you'd like to contribute a small monetary sign of appreciation, either by becoming a regular supporter from as little as $3 per month, using the link in the show notes, or if you're listening on a value for value enabled app, such as Fountain, TrueFans or Podverse, feel free to send a few sats my way. I also occasionally promote products that I personally use, so please use the affiliate link where relevant if you are buying from those fine companies. Thanks so much, I really appreciate it.